The storm had rolled in like a wounded beast, low and trembling across the plains, its voice cracking in the distance with jagged flashes of light. Rain beat down in cold sheets, silver threads slicing the dark, soaking the earth until mud clung heavy to bare feet. Two figures moved through it, wrapped in thin wool blankets that did little against the sting. The elder Ayoka, 30 winters of sorrow and strength etched upon her face, held her younger sister close. Nalin's steps faltered, her lips whispering prayers against the thunder. Behind them lay ashes of a home burned out of memory, before them only endless rain, and somewhere ahead, a flicker of lantern light. It glowed in the distance, fragile as hope itself. The sisters pressed toward it, rain running like tears down their cheeks, until the outline of a weathered barn took shape. A man stood in its doorway, coat long and dripping, brim of his hat shadowing his face. His presence was rooted, like the earth itself refused to move him. Ayoka stopped, her hand firm on Nalin's wrist, but the younger woman stepped forward, desperate. Lightning cracked behind them, revealing his eyes, pale and guarded, carved from solitude. Jonas McGraw was his name, though the sisters did not know it yet. A rancher marked by town gossip, by the silence of too many nights alone. He looked upon them not with welcome, but with suspicion sharpened into cruelty. His voice carried against the storm, low and steady. "You shouldn't be here." "The town won't forgive me if I let you in." His words fell heavy, each one pressing them back toward the rain. Ayoka lowered her gaze, shame already familiar, but Nalin's youth flared into anger. "We'll freeze," she said, her voice breaking. Jonas was silent for a time, watching their faces in the lantern's glow. His lips tightened as if war waged inside him. Then came the words, bitter and cutting. "Only if you'll be my wives tonight." The storm seemed to hush at his cruelty. Ayoka's chest burned hot against the cold rain. Nalin recoiled, her fists trembling inside the blanket. The insult was clear, the wound deliberate. Yet through Jonas's harshness, Ayoka saw something hidden. Not desire, but despair, as though his words were less demand than punishment. Of them, of himself. The silence that followed was a wound of its own. At last, Ayoka lifted her chin, the fire of her spirit refusing to break. She led Nalin past him into the barn. The smell of damp hay and restless horses filled the air, the lantern throwing long shadows on the wooden walls. Jonas closed the door against the storm, setting the lock with a sound that echoed finality. His eyes lingered on them, unreadable, his condition hanging in the air like smoke. The sisters settled into a corner, their wet blankets clinging to them, their breaths visible in the cold. Jonas placed another blanket on the hay near them, his movements stiff, then stepped back. Nalin's eyes followed him with anger, daring him to cross the space between. But Jonas never did. Instead, he leaned against a post, the lantern light carving hollows in his weary face. The barn filled with the soft sounds of dripping water, the shifting of horses, the thunder's rumble retreating into distance. For long moments, no one spoke. The unspoken weighed heavier than any words. In the quiet, Ayoka felt her heart ache, not from fear, but from the strangeness of his cruelty. She had braced for violation, but instead found a man who gave them warmth without touch, a test without action. Shame had been laid upon them, yes, but something else lingered, like a question unanswered. The storm outside eased, though the storm within each of them did not. Jonas sat in silence, his hat pulled low, while the sisters lay together in uneasy rest. Nalin whispered of leaving at first light, but Ayoka only closed her eyes, listening to the rain's slow retreat. No one slept easily that night. The storm had given them shelter, but not peace. Morning broke in hushed gold, sunlight slipping through the slats of the barn, catching on dust motes that rose and drifted like tiny spirits. The storm had spent itself, leaving the earth soaked and shining, the air washed clean. Horses stirred in their stalls, stamping hooves against wet straw, and the sisters woke with blankets still clinging damp to their skin. Ayoka rose first, her body heavy with weariness, her spirit heavier still. Across the barn, Jonas worked without a word, hands steady as he brushed down a restless mare. The man's coat hung drying over a rail, his shirt dark from sweat and storm. Ayoka stepped closer, her eyes steady, her voice low. "Why?" Jonas paused, the brush still against the mare's flank. He didn't turn, not at first. "Why what?" Her breath shook as she answered, "Why the words you spoke last night?" At last he looked at her. His face seemed carved from stone, but his eyes were not. They carried a weariness more cutting than cruelty. "Because I wanted to see if you'd stay, to see if there was still a scrap of fire left in you, or in me. The town's already branded me traitor Indian lover. I've spent years listening to whispers that I'm less of a man. I thought—" His voice faltered, bitter at his own confession. "I thought if you could endure the shame, I could endure mine." Ayoka's silence was sharper than rebuke. Shame for herself melted into pity for him, though she would not name it. She turned back to Nalan, who had risen now, eyes fierce with distrust. The three of them moved through the morning in silence, each bound by words left unspoken. By midday, the silence was broken not by them, but by a rider passing on the distant trail. He slowed, staring too long at the sight of the sisters by the barn. His gaze burned with suspicion before he spurred his horse on. Jonas's jaw tightened. "By sundown," he muttered, "all of Medicine Bluff will know." And by sundown, they did. Gossip, like wildfire, carried faster than the storm. Jonas McGraw sheltering Apache women, whispers turned to threats, threats turning to plans. Jonas knew the town's men would come, some carrying rope, others carrying rifles. The sisters argued in whispers that night, Nalan insistent they should leave to spare him. "We are not his burden," she hissed. But Ayoka shook her head, her voice steady. "He is already tied to us, whether he wished it or not." She could not say why she felt it so deeply, only that the thread was there, binding them through storm and shame. In the days that followed, the ranch bore witness to small changes. Ayoka helped mend a broken fence, her hands working beside Jonas's, their fingers brushing once, lingering longer than they should. She carried water to the trough, and he offered her the first drink, watching as she tilted the dipper to her lips. He spread his coat across her shoulders at dusk when the air grew sharp. He never spoke of last night's words again, yet each small act unraveled them, thread by thread. Jonas began to watch her differently, not as a test or burden, but as something he did not know how to name. And Ayoka, though her pride was scarred, found her heart softened against her will. Nalan saw it too, her protectiveness bristling, but even she could not deny the quiet decency that began to show through Jonas's roughness. It was a fragile peace, easily broken. And it broke when the riders came. Dust rose on the horizon, a dozen men armed with anger, rifles slung across shoulders. Their horses snorted as they drew up to the ranch house, eyes hard, voices sharper. "Turn them out, McGraw," one shouted, "or we'll drag them out ourselves." Jonas stepped forward, hat low against the sun, shoulders squared. The sisters stood just behind him, the wind pulling at their skirts, hair streaming like dark banners. He didn't falter. "These women are under my roof," he said. "That makes them mine to protect." The crowd sneered, spitting words meant to shame. "Your wives, McGraw? That it?" Laughter rose, ugly and biting. Jonas's voice thundered back, steady as the storm he had weathered with them. "Not wives. Not bargains. Family." The word hung in the air, heavier than any rifle. The men shifted uneasily, their cruelty thrown back upon them. Jonas's eyes burned not with anger but with conviction, daring them to strip him of his last scrap of dignity. The silence stretched until, one by one, the riders broke, muttering curses as they wheeled their horses away. Dust swallowed them again, leaving the ranch in stillness. When the last echo of hooves faded, Jonas lowered his head, breath shaking out of him. The sisters remained at his side, Ayoka's hand brushing against his, small as the gesture was. He looked at her then, really looked, and she did not look away. Something unspoken passed between them, not ownership, not bargain, but trust born in fire and storm. That night the ranch lay quiet. The barn smelled of hay and horse, the air cool, the stars endless overhead. The three of them sat in silence. Yet it was a softer silence now, a silence of belonging, and to you who listen, know this. The West was a land that stripped men and women bare. But storms have a way of washing what is false away. Dignity once tested is not easily stolen. When thunder comes for you, as it surely will, hold fast to the sacred thing within your keeping. Your own heart, unbroken, unbargained, and yours alone.